Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign released record fundraising numbers Thursday. The candidate announced a $25 million haul for January. Campaign officials say that came from 1.3 million donations. More than 200,000 of the contributors were new donors. The campaign is now on track to invest over $5 million in new television and digital ad buys. Senator Sanders is also declaring victory in the Iowa caucuses. He leads in the popular vote with 97% of the results in Thursday. However, when it comes to state delegates, Sanders is slightly trailing Pete Buttigieg. Sanders called the difference, quote, meaningless. For more on this, let's bring in Sarah Ewall-Wice. She's a CBS News political unit associate producer. Sarah, thank you so much. It's not the first time a candidate has brought in a haul of $20 million. Why is this significant for Sanders?
Right. So we've heard other candidates have brought in upwards of $20 million, 20, 21, 22, 23. But what's different is usually that's over an entire quarter. So in the fourth quarter, multiple candidates brought in 20 plus million. This is in 1 month. So Bernie Sanders brought in $25 million in 31 days. And to break that down further, you did mention that's from more than 1 million donations, 600,000 donors, 200,000 of those donors are new, which is extremely significant because here we are in January. He's been campaigning already for 11 months, and it shows he's still bringing in new supporters that can further fuel his campaign leading into these critical months. His campaign mentioned that 99.9% of his donors can donate again. They haven't maxed out on their donations. And that is also interesting because they can continue fueling that campaign all the way through potentially the conventions, and it's something that we need to keep an eye on with this huge grassroots movement that he's always talking about.
So his campaign has a very strong ground game, then, it would appear.
That is correct. And with this $25 million, they say they're going to up their staffing and their ad buys in future states. Very significant. Of course, Bernie Sanders has raised the most money of any of the Democrats currently in this race. For a little bit of context, Pete Buttigieg raised $24.7 million in the fourth quarter, which was over that 3-month span.
I was going to ask you about Buttigieg because obviously he's neck and neck with Sanders in Iowa when it comes to at least how the results are shaping up now. But so you're saying that his fundraising can't compare? His
fundraising does not compare. One, Pete Buttigieg, as you'll recall, does in fact attend those big dollar fundraisers, whereas Bernie Sanders does not. And he's raised that much money, but over 3 months, where Bernie has not. He raised it in a month. Additionally, on that note, the $5.5 million that the Bernie Sanders campaign is about to spend on ad buys is looking ahead to future Super Tuesday states. Those are the states that hold contests on March 3rd. So we're still focused on these first 4 states, including Iowa, where we don't actually know the full results.
They're already looking ahead to Super Tuesday.
He's looking ahead.
Well, let's you and I back up a little bit to look at New Hampshire, though, because that's sort of next on the list. You report that a lot of these candidates are spending a lot of money on ad buys in New Hampshire. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's not to the same extent as ad buys were in Iowa. Of course, the markets are, it's different costs in different markets. But so far, candidates have spent $43 million in New Hampshire leading up to the February 11th primary that's happening there early next week. Of that, Tom Steyer is obviously spending the most. He's a self-funded billionaire. Behind him, it's Bernie Sanders, who spent nearly $6 million. Pete Buttigieg and Andrew Yang have each spent almost $4 million.
Interestingly, Biden, who came in fourth in Iowa, hasn't even cracked $1 million in ad buys there, correct? Is his strategy to just skip New Hampshire?
He is not skipping New Hampshire. He has been in the state all week. He's been campaigning in the state all week. But it's interesting you say they've spent less than $1 million in ad buys. We should clarify that. It's between his campaign and the super PAC that supports him, Unite the Country, that have spent still less than $1 million. Of that, the super PAC has actually spent the bulk of that money. His campaign has spent less than $100,000 on ad buys in New Hampshire. And he does have some ground to make up there. The latest poll put him in 3rd place. The Monmouth poll released today put him behind Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg. He's already called Iowa a gut punch, so he needs to make up some ground.
So what is the strategy there, then, spending so little on the ad buys?
You know, he's been on the ground. He's been meeting with people on the ground. It'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow in the debate. I know a lot of campaigns have not been on the trail so much today and tomorrow leading up to tomorrow night's debate. It's the only debate taking place in New Hampshire ahead of this primary coming up on Tuesday.
So, Sarah, this Friday is the next Democratic debate. Thursday is the deadline to qualify. Remind us what the qualifications are this time around and who will we see on that debate stage?
Right. So the qualifications for the debate this go round are very similar to the qualifications that were for the Iowa debate in January, with one small change to those qualifications. There are going to be 7 candidates on the debate stage come Friday night. That's one more than were on the debate stage in January. Andrew Yang was not on the debate stage then, but he'll be back for the next one in New Hampshire. With that said, the qualifications were 5% polling in 4 national or state polls or 7% polling in 2 state polls out of New Hampshire, South Carolina, or Nevada. They dropped the polling for Iowa for this debate. Separately, though, however, you could see getting on the debate stage based on the Iowa caucuses. And this is something that's funny because we don't know the results yet of the Iowa caucuses, but they did add the potential to get on the debate stage by having an Iowa delegate. That is something that obviously is not happening. It'll be interesting to see if any candidates bring it up at a future date for the debates moving forward.
So, you mentioned coming ahead the Nevada caucuses. We know the South Carolina primary is right around the bend. What kind of money are the candidates putting into these contests?
So candidates are spending in Nevada and South Carolina leading up to those, the caucuses in Nevada and the primaries in South Carolina. Right now, Tom Steyer is leading in ad buys, not surprisingly, being a billionaire in both of those states. Right behind him, it's interesting because Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg are spending the most, over $1 million each in South Carolina, and Bernie Sanders is spending the most, the only candidate spending over $1 million in Nevada on ad buys as of right now, besides Tom Steyer. Joe Biden actually pulled money out of South Carolina. That is a state where he has a lot of strong support. It's of the 4 early states, it's probably where he has the most support right now.
So he wants to focus on other places.
Exactly, and he's put some of that funding into Nevada, it shows.
So talk to us about Mike Bloomberg. How is this all shaping up for Bloomberg? We know he's also spending a lot of money. Where is he putting it?
He is spending his money in Super Tuesday states and across the country. He's not spending it in these 4 early states that we've been focused on so closely recently. He has spent more than $300 million of his own money.
Wow.
Interestingly enough, while he's been spending that money across the country, with Bernie Sanders' $5.5 million that he's about to start spending in these Super Tuesday states, he'll be the only other candidate who is airing ads in some of these states. In most of these states, other candidates haven't even gotten there yet, and it's unclear whether they'll have the funds to really invest in those states. A few candidates have put ads in Texas, in California, but across the board, no one's coming close.
That's interesting. So in Super Tuesday, you're just looking at Sanders and Bloomberg ads.
For all the states so far, of course, Sanders said today that he was focused on 10 states, including the 2 that he's already been investing in. Bloomberg is across the board outspending, obviously,
haven't
everyone.
the donor thresholds changed for the following debate? The debate following the one on Friday?
So after Friday's debate, there is no donor threshold anymore. So they got rid of the donor threshold heading into Nevada. Instead, it is 10% polling national polls or 12% in state polls. And then you can also get, it depends on the delegate count that you have out of New Hampshire, Iowa, will also help qualify you for the Nevada debate. But
Which some Democratic candidates, though, are criticizing the DNC and saying this is a direct capitulation to Bloomberg.
Exactly. Of course, Bloomberg is not asking for donations because he doesn't need to. He's funding this campaign completely on his own, so he was never going to qualify with that donor threshold. They dropped the threshold, and a lot of candidates spoke out angry at the DNC for doing so.
Has the DNC replied or responded, explained themselves at all?
The DNC has been facing criticism for the debate thresholds since last year, when they had the donor thresholds and they were too high for some candidates. There was complaints. The polling led to complaints. There was a problem with the fact that candidates weren't reaching these thresholds, and it led to a lack of diversity despite the most historically diverse field originally on the debate stage. Cory Booker, Andrew Yang, and Julian Castro, who've all spoken out about the situation, all tried to get the debate qualifications changed previously, and now candidates are criticizing they did change them, but not for any of those candidates, for Mike Bloomberg.
I was going to say the timing doesn't look very good,
exactly.
Right?
No, it is not looking good, but they usually avoid speaking out about it,
right.
Specifically the DNC.
All right. Well, Sarah Ewall-Wice, thank you so much for joining us and doing great work out on the trail. Thank you so much for being with us.